Hello, and welcome to the Design to Thrive podcast for young people. My name is Caroline Brewer, and this is my son, Jack. This is now our fifth episode of this series of podcasts, and what we've been doing is sharing what we call the inside out understanding. And there are two key elements to that understanding. The first is that 100% of our experience is created inside of our minds by our thinking. There is nothing on the outside that can have us experience or feel anything that doesn't first come through our thinking. So that's the first big thing to really understand, that we basically live in our minds as a first point. The second point is that our system is designed to thrive, that we have all of the innate resilience and resourcefulness that we need to have a fulfilling, happy, successful, whatever that means to you, successful life. But what happens is that our thinking covers that up. It's very challenging to find the words to describe this, because what we're talking about is really intangible. It's about the essence of who we are. And you shared beautifully in the episode on ego that there's something deeper, a deeper essence. But finding the words is quite challenging. So this episode, we thought we'd have a bit of fun with metaphors, because metaphors are a great way of, if you like, giving a deeper understanding of something than just the words. Is that
Yeah, it helps to explain something that's almost unexplainable.
Yes. So we're gonna have a bit of a go. And I've got my table here of some of my favourite metaphors, some that Jack is familiar with, and some not so familiar with. So I'm going to sort of test out your, if you like, your understanding or meaning that you give to a particular metaphor. And one of my favourite metaphors is the bubbles. If you can all see this, one of these, I'm sure everyone knows what is going to happen or not happen, as the case may be. He's told me to be careful of the equipment, so that's why I'm blowing them in his face. So, Jack, what meaning is conveyed, do you think, by these bubbles?
Well, there's a few different things that bubbles can show, isn't there? So as you can see them in the air, they're all of different sizes, shapes. Well, they're not all different shapes, they're all the same shape, but they're all different sizes and they all take a different form. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some last a very long time, some last no time at all. And I think that very elegantly translates to thoughts at the same time. Your thoughts can be bigger, smaller, more meaningful, less meaningful. They eventually all pop, but some take longer, some take less time, some are quick like a whip. They come in, leave it instantly. Some stick around for minutes, hours, days sometimes, and very elegantly shown by the bubbles, spending different time in the air, landing on different things. Some are so stable they don't even pop on landing on something, they just sit there for a while. I think that is a really good way to sort of depict the sort of how random thoughts can be.
Yeah, and some of the blows, I produced only one bubble or two bubbles. Some of them, lots of bubbles. So we can give extra meaning if each bubble represents a thought about something, and that gives us meaning to that thing, then there will be some things that we add little meaning to. There's only 1 or 2 bubbles, and some things that we add lots of meaning to, and that's lots of. And just think, if you had had your bubble pot, and I had my bubble pot, and we were both blowing bubbles at each other, how many thoughts would be created then?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to think of like blowing through the bubble wand is like an experience. Everything you experience is a blow that can produce thoughts. Like seeing something beautiful can be the blow that creates loads of thoughts, or seeing something that you deem upsetting can create a flurry of different bubbles. And every person that experiences that at the same time is having their own blow of bubbles, so it's creating a huge array of different thoughts, too many to comprehend.
Yeah, and that is what is creating our experience, is the number of bubbles. So yeah, and we might look at one thing on one day and experience it through just a few bubbles, and look at the same thing and experience it through many bubbles. So it's about what is our state of mind when we are in that experience. That will tell how many bubbles are being blown. And as you say, the really valuable thing is that the bubbles are really just part of, they're illusory, they don't last. They're transient. They will burst. You don't need to do anything about them. You don't need to go around, although when you see young kids with bubbles, they want to run up and burst them, don't they? But we don't need to burst them when we really understand that the bubbles themselves are designed that way. They don't have the substance that they appear to have. The look of them is not what they really are. And so absolutely, that's a great metaphor for understanding our thinking and how that works. So this is the next metaphor. I hope everyone can see what this is. It's commonly referred to as a snow globe. So what we tend to do is shake it up and it creates snow. So what is the meaning that conveys to you in terms of what we're talking about?
Well, sort of in a similar vein to the bubbles, each little piece of snow inside a snow globe can be seen as a thought in this metaphor. And when you shake it, the image underneath becomes cloudy and hard to see, obscured by all the snow, or in this metaphor, all the thought. That image in the middle is what we called in episode 2 the inner spark. So when you have this flurry of thoughts, it can obscure or make it harder to see the inner compass, the inner spark telling you the right direction to go. But when you let it settle for a while, then the image becomes clear. There are still thoughts up here. I don't know how easy it is to see on camera, but there are still thoughts. There's still flecks of snow floating around, but it's so easy to see that image in the middle. And that's what it's like for our inner spark. When we keep having these flurries of thought, and we keep adding to them, and we keep sort of agitating the snow globe, then it becomes harder and harder and harder and harder to see the inner compass. When we let it settle, when we let ourselves settle, suddenly the image is very clear.
Is there anything that you could do if I gave you this, other than, as you say, stopping shaking? Is there anything you could do to settle any of those flakes of snow?
No. It's a completely passive act.
Yeah. So that is that's what we're saying, is that there isn't anything that you can do to get rid of your thoughts. It's just about recognizing that they are part of that illusion. They are the bubbles, and they will burst. They are the snow, and they will settle if we don't shake the snow globe. And when we don't shake the snow globe, we get clarity about what to do, what our next step is. And that's really all we can ever want, isn't it? Is to have clarity about the next step, and then in the next moment clarity about the next step. But the more that we agitate and shake, the more thinking we create, the less clarity we have. Okay. What about this one?
So the balloon the balloon can be seen as an individual thought or an experience, and every time you blow into it, the balloon gets bigger. Seems like more of an immediate object, seems more real, seems more tangible. All of these things. And also, it's experiencing more pressure. Every time you blow into it, it gets harder and harder and more solid, and experiences more and more pressure. The same as you, and same as a thought. As you think about a thought, as you give it more presence in your mind, it becomes more tangible. It becomes more real to you. In your experience, it becomes more real. The more effort you put into this thought, the bigger it becomes, the more pressure it starts to put on you. Mm-hmm. And that's the same as the balloon. Every time you blow into the balloon, every time you increase the amount of time you're giving to a thought, the bigger it gets, the more real it gets. And also, to an extent, the more dangerous it gets. Because a balloon can pop at any time.
Yeah.
Depending on how much pressure is put on it. And that's also something that happens with your thoughts. If you put so much pressure, so much effort into one thought, it can cause you great harm in the future. So the thing to sort of acknowledge about the balloon is that over time it starts to deflate by itself. When we stop blowing into it, when we stop adding more thought to this already very big, very real thought, it starts to deflate. It starts to go back to being just an empty shell. And then it can be passed off like any other thought. A bubble rather than a balloon.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't need to get to bursting point, but it's, as you say, it's really useful to think about the amount of pressure that is in that. And actually, as you were talking, I recognised that it's harder to keep blowing it up.
Yeah.
When it gets to a certain size, a certain tension, then it's tough to keep blowing air into it.
Yeah.
So it's, it sort of, it has that, we get caught in the grip of it, don't we, under pressure. I'm just going to let it go. Sorry about that.
And I think there's an interesting crossover of the two metaphors here, of the balloon and the bubble. When the bubble pops, it's a non-event.
Yeah.
It just disappears. It's gone. No, and no one cares. Pop, gone. Next bubble, pop, gone. When a balloon pops, everyone in the room jumps. And that's the same for thoughts that you give unnecessary power to. Because you're the person who assigns the power of these thoughts by seeing them as more real or more important. And so these ones that you give lots of attention to, the balloons, when they pop under pressure, it's a really loud bang. And that can be even painful. Whereas when you let it deflate and become a bubble again, when it pops, it means nothing. It's just a light little...
So it's part of the illusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fact that it becomes big and pressurized is just part of the same illusion. It feels real. I mean, I could feel myself thinking, I wonder if this will pop. That'll make a bit of a drama on the camera. But that's just an illusion. It's still just a balloon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we just come to our last one, which may or may not work, but I think brings everything together. And I'm just going to turn this on. This is a light bulb, fairly dramatic on camera. And well, do you want to? Can you say anything about what you think the meaning just of this in its, shall we say, raw form?
Well, I mean, what immediately jumps out is the inner spark, isn't it? That's what the light represents. Is that base level with nothing obscuring it. It is this bright, and on the camera, insanely bright.
Yes, that's lovely, isn't it?
Yes. So this is the inner spark with nothing else obscuring it. This is the image that the snow globe represents. This is you.
This is you. This is you. This is the essence of you, me, everyone listening to this. Every human being has this as their essence. Okay, so we're just going to do a couple of things. Hopefully I didn't get it. No, it's not hot. Feels a bit like Blue Peter. Except if it was Blue Peter, I'd have one that was already.
Oh yeah, you just like get out the ready-made one, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Here's one I made earlier. Okay. Okay, so what are we?
Well, now that there's a lamp
here?
shade on it, it diffuses the light, makes it harder to see the core essence of the light bulb. You can't see the light bulb, you can just see its effect on the lampshade around it. So what I'm assuming is meant by this lampshade is your thoughts. Like this is obscuring the light, and this is what you experience. Is the light shade. You can tell the light's behind it always because there's light behind, like there's light on the light shade, but it's less dramatic, less bright, slightly harder to tell. I couldn't tell you exactly what the light bulb looked like. I could just tell you that there was something making light.
There is a light bulb behind it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So this is representing us when we're calm and we've just got a general level of thinking going on. But I'm now going to add some, if we call them darker thoughts. So this might be where I'm getting caught up now in my thinking. So I don't know how well it can be. I'll bring it up in a minute and show you the camera. But Jack, what's going on here?
Well, it's becoming more obscured. Every thought, every black piece of fabric which represents a bad thought that you add to this light shade, it becomes harder and harder to see the light behind it. In some very specific patches over here, I couldn't even tell you that there was a light behind it. Here in real life, I can't even see any light through this part. And I think that's very interesting for the fact that it can seem that way. When you are in a bad position, when you have these bad thoughts and you've given them power and they've become more present, it can feel at points where you can only see black. There's nothing but this patch of black completely obscuring the light, but it doesn't mean the light's not there.
No. Well, that was going to be the next question. Is the light still there?
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you know that the light is still there, but you can't see it here?
It's one of those things that you learn, isn't it? So I know that there's a light there because I saw it when there weren't black pieces of fabric covering it up. And that's the same for the inner spark. In those moments of clarity, that is what you are experiencing, is your inner spark. And the fact that you've had moments of clarity proves that you have it, just like everyone else. And you can have, as this lampshade shows, you can hold lots and lots and lots of thoughts all at the same time. But after a time, some of these will pop, and suddenly you'll be able to see a patch of light peeking through again. And then my general experience of it is, once I get a little patch, that gives me some hope, and I start to remove other ones as well, and it starts to become easier and easier to find clarity. And I often find that, as you did when you were putting on the thoughts, that they come in waves. Right. It's not just one dark thought by itself. It's generally a wave of dark thoughts spurred either by an experience I've had or something that someone's told me, and they come in and they obscure, and it becomes very, very dark very quickly. But as soon as I start to see patches of light through again, the patches of light come faster and faster, and I return to this state of clarity, of being just the lampshade with no dark thoughts on top of it.
Yeah. So it's a great metaphor for state of mind, and I think really that's what you were describing. When there's a whole collection of dark thoughts, then everything you experience is through that. Those glasses, we talked about glasses, I think in an earlier episode, that's your state of mind, that it affects the whole of your experience. And yet, as you say, when you can glimpse that the clarity is there, that starts to break that down, and then your state of mind settles, and you know what to do next. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jack. That's just an example of 4 different metaphors that we'd really like to encourage you to just play with. You may come up with your other with some other metaphors. We'd love you to share those in the comments. You might come up with different explanations of the metaphors that we've used, that we might not have seen something particular that you've seen. So we've looked at bubbles, we've looked at the snow globe, we've looked at the balloon, and we've looked at the lampshade, of all just different ways of looking at these same 2 things, that we experience life through our thoughts. 100% everything is happening within our minds, and that's what's creating our experience, and that we are designed to thrive. We have this inner spark, this essence, which is pure energy, pure light, that will guide us. That's why we talk about it in terms of being a compass, an inner compass that will guide us through life. And that's true for you, for me, for everyone who's listening to this.
Yeah, I just want to say that these sort of explanations that I've given are just my personal experience of these metaphors, and you, upon listening to these metaphors, might find a completely different meaning from them. The bubbles might mean something completely different to you than they did to me, but having a thought, thinking about what they do mean, could help a lot with your daily life, and some might resonate far more than others. Some might be completely irrelevant to you, and you might feel completely disconnected from them, and that's fine. We're all living a personal experience, and we're just trying to give you a new perspective on yours.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know some people in particular who love the snow globe and who refer to it. You know, when they get lost, they can look at it and go, oh, I've just got caught up in the snow. So use this in whatever works for you. Is beautifully what you're expressing there. So thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been helpful. Again, any comments, get in touch. We're here to help and support. We're both obviously very interested and passionate about well-being and mental health for young people.